Vietnam women have become a structural pillar of industrial production and GDP, while India is still struggling to turn that same idea into a national advantage. According to a World Bank document, Vietnam's industrial growth has been built with women at the center of factory production, especially in export-oriented industrial parks. Women make up 58% of the workforce in these parks. Around 4.8 million women work in IP manufacturing, and manufacturing accounted for about 24% of GDP in 2023, showing that women's industrial employment is directly tied to national output. Vietnam. Women as industrial backbone. Vietnam's model is distinctive because women are not just participating in the labor market, they are concentrated in the sectors that power exports and industrial output. The World Bank report notes that women are the backbone of industrial parks, with about 93% of women workers in low-skilled roles, and women making up 75% of the workforce in the textile and garment sector, one of the country's major export engines. This concentration means women's labor is not peripheral, but essential to production volumes, export competitiveness, and overall manufacturing GDP contribution. Vietnam also benefits from the fact that manufacturing remains a major share of the economy, contributing about 24% of GDP in 2023. The report further argues that childcare access is economic infrastructure, because women's ability to stay in industrial jobs depends heavily on affordable care near industrial parks. In other words, Vietnam's GDP growth is linked not only to factories and foreign investment, but also to the continued availability of women workers in those factories. In India, women's participation is rising, but the system still leaves many women in flexible, informal, or low productivity work. And policy documents continue to stress the need for better skilling, childcare, and industry-aligned training to expand women's entry into manufacturing. The problem is not that India lacks talent. The problem is that too many women are still blocked by weak skilling pipelines, limited childcare, rigid work structures, and a labor market that keeps pushing them into informal or low productivity jobs. India talks a lot about manufacturing growth, but the reality on the ground is uneven. Women's participation is improving, yet the system still fails to convert that progress into broad, stable, industrial employment across sectors. By contrast, Vietnam has treated women's factory work as economic infrastructure, not as a side issue. Its industrial parks, export sectors, and manufacturing model are built around women's labor in a way India has not matched. That exposes a serious weakness in India's development strategy. If the country cannot create childcare access, industry-linked training, and flexible but secure work systems, then it will keep underusing half its workforce. So, the criticism is simple. India's growth story is still too incomplete, too uneven, and too dependent on rhetoric rather than structural reform. Until women are fully supported in manufacturing and industry, India will keep lagging behind countries that turned inclusion into productivity. India, progress, but gaps remain. India is moving in the right direction, but the female industrial workforce is still held back by skill gaps and care burdens. The economic survey says India needs more vocational education and skill development to strengthen the quality of its workforce, and it specifically highlights the need to improve women's participation in manufacturing. It also notes that women face structural barriers such as caregiving responsibilities, inflexible work arrangements, and limited access to childcare facilities, all of which reduce their ability to enter and remain in industrial jobs. At the same time, India's female labor force participation has improved to 41.7% in 2023 to 24, and women accounted for nearly 3/4 of incremental manufacturing jobs during that period, which is encouraging. But the same source also shows that the transition is incomplete. Manufacturing still remains male-dominated in most settings, and women's industrial employment is often concentrated in selected sectors such as apparel and electronics, rather than across the full industrial base. This suggests India has momentum, but not yet the broad-based female industrial skilling ecosystem Vietnam has leveraged. Conclusion. The core difference is that Vietnam has turned women's factory work into a stable production advantage, while India is still trying to build the skilling and care ecosystem that would allow more women to enter industrial employment at scale.